Alright, looks like we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to yet another Moonshire Moon Monday. Sorry, let me gather my thoughts. The setup today is quite a bit different than it normally is. I'm using multiple computers to stream this today. Very unusual, but hopefully it'll go smoothly. The whole idea is that I'm going to be able to record the content at full quality using the other computer, and then it's streaming to my Windows computer, this one that I'm working off of and streaming off of, and that's how the stream is going to function. Hopefully, we'll see. So far, it seems to be working just fine, so no complaints yet. But we'll give it a few minutes for the chat to catch up, because I know there's always a bit of a delay for the start of everything, but I see a few folks in chat already. We got SLG and Wolf and Awesome Kid Games. Welcome in. I will be working on some shaders today. There's lots and lots of shader work that I want to be working on today. And basically picking up from last week, because last week I started on the shader work and I showed some of the currently functioning shaders, but since last week I have completely rewritten all of the shader, like all the shader code, and it is lovely. So I'm going to be showing that today. And we're going to be adding some more stuff. You're on 3,300 resets for the Shiny Dialga. I'm so sorry to hear that. Duck, DI, good morning, all. Happy Monday. Happy Monday to you. Thank you for being here. Saba, a Ryu, Cade. Lots of Cades. I'm a big fan of the Cade trend. Abience, welcome and thank you so much for being here. Wolf, I hope you get your Shiny Dialga soon. That sounds like a big pain in the butt. But I've never done the hard reset method for shinies. I have grinded via eggs. Winter Studio, do I love or hate shaders more since last time? I think I have grown to appreciate them a little bit more. So let me show you what I'm working with. So the way I'm doing my shaders is all in one shader. So this script here, shader.script, is the one and only shader in the entire game. Like the entire code base, this is the only script. And as I write more shaders, it's all going to go in here. And I plan to organize this through modules. So far I have two different modules. I have this color module, so mod color, and I have the light module, mod light. And I actually haven't looked at this for like a day because I was away yesterday. Okay, so it's very, very blue, and the light is functional. I actually love how the light looks. I think it looks very, very nice and soft. But the reason why it works so well is it's very customizable. So like here, I just gave light sources to these objects randomly. They're not really... It's not, obviously, it's still unfinished, but I think that this is a good start. So the way that the light sources are organized is lights are able to have a position, a radius, and intensity, and how much it feathers. So in this case, like, I think these are full intensity, but you can change like how bright the light is. You can change how much of the feather it has. So let me show that real quick. Let me change it so the props create feather. Okay, so right now the props are creating half feathers, which means that it starts to feather out halfway through the radius. But if I set this to 0, it should be like a hard edge. There we go, look at that. So this is what the light sources look like with no feathering. They're just like solid circles. And actually, for a while, in my old versions of this game, it used some light sources that looked like this, where it was very, very hard cutouts. And in a way, I do kind of like it, but I wish I could have. I wish there was an easier way for me to go back and forth. How about I add another light source to the player? I think I started doing this too. So the way light sources work is a little bit complicated. So let me go to player.lua. I have not added a light yet. I keep hitting my microphone, I'm sorry. Both feel okay to me. Yeah, I think both have their own appeal. So I'm going to do this exact same thing here. And player, when player is created, this is just going to be a default light source for the player. Instead of prop, this is supposed to be player. Player, okay. And the radius, we'll give it a radius of like 32. An intensity of, we'll give it an intensity of 0.5 so I can show what that looks like. And then a feather of, we'll go back to 0.5. Okay, so now the player has light. Player.light. Now, whenever we update the player, and actually there can be multiple players in this new code base, so I need to go over into here. If player.weapon, I need to say, actually, if player.light, and I bet it'll figure it out. Yeah, player.light set position. Not just set position, it's player.light update. It actually got this wrong. I need to say update DT like that. So this is going to change the light source's position every single frame to match the player's X and Y position. And we're also passing in DT, so if the light source has any like movement logic or time-based logic, you know, that's pretty common. So let's go ahead and try this. I happen to glow where it's a sprite that's opaque, the more performant than shaders doing the glow. I'm not exactly sure what you mean, but it is kind of how the vignette works. Because the way the light sources work is there's an overlay. There's like a black overlay over top of the screen. So really it looks like this. It's a big black like window, but with the light sources, they like pierce through the darkness. Oh, and actually, yeah, you can see this, the player's light source. So the player has the 0.5 intensity and 0.5 feather. So it has a very, very soft glow. It's not very bright at all. It's a very, very soft glow. Very soft feathering. But we could change this again. We could change any aspect of the player's light here. We could make it so that it is fully intense and that it does not feather, and it'll look like the other ones. I wish that I could make it so that the window automatically opens over here. Actually, I think I can. I think I can do that. Yeah, that works. What if you set it above 1? I think that the shader caps it. Let's see. But we can test it. I'm gonna test it after this, just in case. Intensity. So all the intensity is saved in this light profile. Intensity, okay. I think that it won't look any different because intensity just describes how much it pierces the darkness. And at a value of 1, it's completely piercing the darkness. So if it's 2, it's still completely piercing the darkness. So I don't think it makes any difference. But that is a good thing to test. We're going to set the intensity to 100 and see if that makes any difference. And it does not. Because really, there is no intensity to any of this. It's just there's the black overlay, and these circles are piercing the darkness. And at intensity 1, it is fully piercing the darkness. And at intensity like 0.5, it is only half doing it. So I wish I had I could make a faster way to test this out, but it would take time, and I'd have to like make the UI for it. So when our light sources merge with existing light source, okay, let's look more into it. So I think that the player's light source is going to be kind of like this, where it's at intensity probably half and feather half. So if we try this out, not working with shaders needed when you work with custom engine or OpenGL. Well, this is OpenGL. In fact, the shader code is GLSL. So OpenGL shader language that's what language this is. This code here actually is not it's not Lua. Even though this takes place in a Lua file, this script, this shader script, all of this code here is GLSL code. So this is, well, it's GLSL adapted for Love 2D, which is like 95% the same as GLSL. So if you're writing shaders for anything that uses OpenGL for graphics processing, the shading language would look really similar to this. There's only some very, very minor differences. Creator World and Watermelon. Hi, welcome in. Shaders on Godot is visualized, but I like the template literal. I'm really eager to see what shaders are like in other engines, because I think working with shaders in Love 2D is kind of a challenge, because you do have to do it through like the language itself. There's not like an interactive interface for making these shaders work. But at the same time, I am happy that I have a really solid understanding. Like, I wrote all of this, and I have a pretty... I think I understand exactly how things function here, which is important to me. And that's kind of the whole purpose of working with a framework for me as well. How I'm like using this framework to make all this code stuff, but it probably would be more efficient and time effective to use something like Godot, because it has all the stuff handled for you. But the trade-off is you don't fully control it, you don't fully understand it, which in most cases you don't need to. If you have a functioning shader system, you don't need to recode it. You don't need to fully understand it if it's already functional. But at the same time, it is fun to understand it, and it is interesting to interact and modify it specifically to like what I want. Godot also uses GLSL. Interesting. That's good to know. It would make sense that lots of engines are using something like that. I'm working on my game, but it's hard to learn. I'm watching your tutorials, but it's not enough. I want to learn more, but there's barely enough other tutorials. The thing is, you don't really learn through tutorials. The reason why there's not enough tutorials is because at a certain point, tutorials stop being helpful. And that's the tricky part, is that you really do just kind of have to jump in and make stuff yourself. I know you want to learn, and the way that you learn is by doing. And it might seem daunting, like, oh, well, how can I make a game if I don't know how to make a game? And the answer is you make a very, very simple game. It would be the same as if you were asking me, like, oh, I don't know how to paint. There's not enough tutorials on how to paint. Well, the answer is you learn how to paint by starting with very, very simple paintings, like paint a painting of an apple. The simplest painting imaginable, and then it's going to look really bad, and then you paint another apple and it'll look a little bit better than your first one, and you go through that process for years, and then you become really good over that time. Like a simple ping pong game. Oh, you are speaking my language. You will fit right in here. I talk about creating Pong all the time. Hashtag Pong mentioned. Creator World, I like you. You will fit right in here. Yes, I'm a big fan of creating Pong as your very first game, because it is the most baseline, simple type of game, but at the same time, it's also pretty complicated, because think about a game of Pong, and I'm gonna open up the what is it, the Google Atari breakout thing, because I always show this whenever I talk about it. But when you think about a simple Pong game like this, there's so much stuff going on here, because you have the movement, you have collisions, you have the UI, you have a scoring system, you have lives, you have I don't know, sound effects and music if you want that. These are concepts that I use in my game every single day, even though this game is quite a bit more simple. So I think that this is sort of the sort of level everyone should start out with. And even this one that I'm showing here is pretty complex. The original Pong on Atari was much simpler than this. This is like an evolution of it. I would say start with just like a ball that you have to paddle back and forth, and then build onto it. That's a really big thing. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close this before I get addicted, because I always get addicted to the Google breakout. LeetCode better for practice programming. Later then I want to join game dev, by the way. So LeetCode is only helpful for the interview process, because when you interview at certain like coding companies, they ask you these coding questions that are really complex and academic. And LeetCode is very helpful for that process, because LeetCode is a lot of questions like it gives you just a practice problem, and then you have to code it from scratch. And I'm a big fan of LeetCode for that practice aspect, but it's academic. It doesn't feel very practical. Oh, also the overlap with the fade and no fade is kind of odd. But no, I do not recommend LeetCode for anything unless you were specifically searching for a job at a company that interviews using LeetCode questions. If you are not interviewing at a company that uses LeetCode questions for the position you're looking for, I do not recommend LeetCode. But a lot of software development positions do have that, and like the ones that I worked at did. And it was really, really hard. It was really complex. I had to study a lot for it, but it was worth it. I would not say it helped me at all in terms of like actually being a good programmer, though. It's all like challenge problems. I'm trying to think of a good example of what to compare this to. It's what I always compare, like sitting in a classroom learning something versus being hands-on and building something. Those are two different types of learning, and LeetCode is just the pinnacle of academic learning. It is all just practice problems, and none of it is very practical. I have two variables in my game called true and false, which are set to their opposites. That's very disturbing. Also, in a lot of languages, true and false are reserved words, so I'm surprised it even allows you to name variables that. How do you recommend learning language or programming like game dev in Godot, or you need C# or even Lua? My advice is just to get started and build the simplest type of game possible. It is going to be hard, and especially if you're starting with no experience at all, it is challenging. You're going to have to look up, you're going to sit down and say, I want to make Pong the simplest game possible, and the first step is I need to make a paddle, and I need to make the paddle move back and forth. So my advice for you is to download any engine, create a paddle, and make it move. And in order to do that, you might have to do some research. You might have to do some challenging stuff in order to get there. But that's the process of learning, is overcoming that challenge. What the? Did you guys see that? My light just turned off. That was weird. Oh, whatever. It's not that dark. We need an FAQ chatbot. I think that would be kind of helpful. But at the same time, these are fun topics to talk about anyway, so I'm okay with it. I think that it would be nice to have a chatbot, or if it's a repetitive question that we get a lot, like what engine is this? I get like what engine is this a lot. That would be nice if it auto-responded. So you're right. I think that to a certain extent that would be helpful. Stratats, hi, welcome in. So let's go back to fixing the light sources. I'm gonna go back to making these intensity 1 and at 0.5. I'll be the bot, beep boop. Wolf, thank you for being the bot. We always appreciate your services. I need to make a bingo card for stream for stream questions. Yeah, basically. There's nothing wrong with that. The reason why there's common questions is because, like, that's just the first thing that, like, it's normal. There's a reason for it. I can name variables true and false because the first letter is uppercase. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Actually, I don't want feather to be 1. I want feather to be 0.5. So this idea of intensity is kind of... it's not something that I accounted for in my old code base because I just had every light source at intensity 1. Every light source pierced the darkness completely. But then I noticed that in certain cases, it just felt very weird that like something that's supposed to have a soft glow had the same intensity as like a flame. A ball of fire was just as bright as like a firefly. And a firefly is not the same intensity as a fire. Fire has much more intensity. What is feather? Feather is the amount of feathering around the edge of the light source. So you can see that this one is very hard-edged, and the one around the player is very soft. Like the flickering of a candle. Yes, that is something that I actually had in the old version. And you know what? Let's go ahead and implement that. I think that would be a good one. So let's put in... I'm trying to think, what should I call this? Because I'll call it variance, and the variance will be a percentage, or should it be a radius amount? Because what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to make it so that the radius shifts slightly between two different values, so that it kind of like fluctuates. Because when you look at a fire, the glow kind of like shifts. It doesn't just stay like a constant circle. It like flickers. So, is your message too long? I'm not sure. RNG intensity, yeah. I think something like that is kind of cool. Making the intensity flicker is an interesting idea too. It's interesting that you mentioned that because it's funny when you said flicker, my mind went to changing the radius over time, which is what I did in my old code base, and I think I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to do intensity as well. I think that would look kind of neat too. So I shouldn't call this variance. I think I should call it flicker. I'll call it flicker. And the reason why I'm so apprehensive about this is because there's a lot of different properties that can go into a flicker. Like, radius could be like, I think this is a decent idea. Rate equals, this could be, I guess it could be a time. Rate, yeah, I'll change this to speed. And then intensity. Okay, so there we go. And should I make it so that the radius and intensity have different tweens? I'm not actually sure about this. The type of guy to turn a year older on his birthday. Yeah, that's probably true. Future 34. Hi, welcome in. Multiply the radius by the intensity, maybe. Oh. Should I do that? That's an interesting idea. So what you're suggesting is kind of a cool idea to automate the whole process because, like, this is kind of odd. The fact that I have to define all of this stuff when really you could just say, what is the intensity of this light? And that could infer all the rest of these, like, aspects. It could infer the flicker and the feather and the radius just based on the intensity. But I actually don't think I want to do that. I think I want to make all of this customizable every time. And if I want to have canned versions, I'll just make it like a class. So I'm going to keep doing it this way. And let's implement this flicker idea. And this is going to happen in lightSource.lua. Oh, wait, no, not lightSource. Oh, shoot. Render.lights. It's just called light. Light.lua. Okay, so we're going to say light.flicker equals nil. And then utils.apply. If we pass in a flicker value, then light.flicker will not be nil. So I actually don't even need to mention this. And then if light.flicker, then, so this is when we need to initialize the flicker. So we're passed in a bunch of flicker values. How should I do this? I'm going to make this an external thing, like function lights colon new flicker, and then local flicker and then now we need to go through all of the different defaults, and I'm actually going to set this like that. And then utils.apply, and this is going to overwrite all of the passed in values for the flicker to this one. So really, this is an option where when I say that, like, this player has a flicker, I could pass in all of these options, and all of these options here are going to be passed all the way down into light and all the way into this FL object. So then all of those properties will reapply to this flicker object and then gets returned here. So then here I can call that function. Or I could just set this to true. And similarly, it's going to call this function, FL is going to be true. True is going to be passed into this function, but which is going to do nothing. And it's just going to receive the defaults. So that's actually really, really nice, the way I have this set up. So I could have flicker set to true, or I could define all of these individual aspects. I think I'm just going to set it to true. And really I might do if type FL is equal to table, because that's the only time I need to do that. Okay, I was looking away for a hot second. But the functions in the game engine and which function to use and where to find them uses the problem I'm facing, like which function does what. I know that is a very, very hard challenge with game development, and really it's a hard challenge with using any sort of engine, is that you have to spend a lot of time researching specific things. That's why I always recommend to make a game and learn through that process, because like you said, you don't know what the functions are and you don't even know what you're looking for. So this is why when you're creating Pong and you're making it so there is a paddle that moves back and forth, and you have to ask yourself, okay, I need to make this paddle move back and forth. How do I do that? Well, what are you going to do? You're going to look up online, how do I make something move in Godot, or whatever engine you're doing? How do I make something move? And you're going to find an article that'll say, in order to make something move, you call this function the linear velocity function and set it to this value. And then you're going to try it. You're going to take that code and you're going to put it into your game and you're going to try it out. You're going to try and make something move, and then you're going to learn a lot more about this function, the linear velocity function. And through that experiment, you have learned something. That is how you learn. You don't learn from watching videos. You learn from trying things. You learn from encountering a problem. How do I make something move? You do research. You find a solution. You implement that solution. And you have now gained experience. You have gained experience. Isn't that lovely? That is how you learn. Just saying, but I think it'd be funny if you made an April Fool's video and called it Moonshire Releases Tomorrow. Oh my gosh, people would lose their mind if I did that, Roy BGB. Thank you for the advice. Sure. EXP, yeah, I like talking about EXP because a lot of this is a grind. It is like Final Fantasy where you have to grind your characters for a while. But make sure that your grinding is actually efficient, because watching videos is not very efficient. Or if it's like Pokemon, where you can put your Pokemon in the daycare, and that's like watching videos. Watching YouTube videos is like putting your Pokemon in the daycare. It's helpful at first because you can grow levels really quickly, but eventually it stops being helpful. Like, eventually the daycare is just useless at a certain level because it's just meaningless. It's just so slow and it's not productive. And the same is, at some point you have to take your Pokemon out of the daycare and start battling it, and it's going to be harder. No, it'll be about $10. It's like, the price is not set. I have no idea. At the moment, the game and the demo and all that stuff is going to be free for quite a while. Also, by the way, while I'm on this, while I'm just talking about general stuff, this stream has no ads. I did a no ad stream. So if you're watching this stream is brought to you by memberships. If you're interested in memberships, feel free. People like Roy BGV and Old School Nerd, or Old School Geek, they are very, very proud supporters. I'm happy to have them as members, and I'm happy to have you all watching. Appreciate that. But yeah, I'm testing out this stream with no ads. It might come back next week. I'm not quite sure. I'm just trying things out to see what works and what doesn't. Really, I was testing things out to see if turning ads off would impact my performance on the algorithm. So after this stream, I'm going to test and see if there's any difference with that. And if there is a difference, I might turn ads back on. And it's possible that it makes no difference, or I don't know. It's hard to say. Will it cost vary depending on countries? Yeah, probably. So Steam has like some built-in cost variance based on region. So I'll have that enabled. It should vary based on your location. But that's a really hot topic. It's a hard problem to solve, because like if you just say, okay, if you're in this country, then the price is less, then some people are going to like spoof their address and try and cheat the system. But at the same time, it is important to have, have pricing that is appropriate for different areas. Do I have cats? I have cats. Or I have a cat. Her name is Misty. I'm a big fan. Love Misty. I wish Misty would come over here and sit on my lap. But I think she gets really scared of the streaming setup, because the streaming setup, I have like these big lights and the cameras and stuff, and I'm talking really loud. Normally I don't talk this much when it's just me and her. I do talk to her a lot though. Back to the flicker. So this function here is going to create a flicker object, and the whole idea is I want function flicker : update dt, And yeah, we're gonna update the flicker here. Actually, it's gonna be even different where I want to use a tween. I wrote my own tweening tool. It's been a while since I actually used it. Let me see how I used it. It's tween.new. Tween.new. I know I used it in a few places, but this is a new file and I haven't been using it too much. That's not right. Where was I using this? I was using this somewhere. Did I change the plants yet? Maybe I didn't change the plants yet to use the new tween. Is it still using flux? Tween? Oh, I know, it was an effect. Effect is using the new tweens. Tween. For anyone who doesn't know what a tween is when you change a value smoothly over time. So the effect, tween, start tween, self.tween, tweens manage. Oh, right. So I have this set up where you can have the effect be... I actually want to do this in a different way. Because I set this up where... Long story short, this is way more complicated than it needs to be. I would rather... Where is that tween file? I think I refactored this so I can just call this. Is my desk attached to my chair? It seems to be moving. Oh, whenever I, like... Maybe it's from me, like, hitting it. My mic is attached, and the camera is, so maybe I'm, like, bumping into it. I'm sorry about that. Is Moonshire built completely in Lua, or are you using an engine in Lua as a scripting language? So I'm using an engine called Love2D, and, yeah, it's using Lua. So I'm going to try calling tween.new, and tween is already loaded into utils, I think. Yes, utils.tween.new. Flickr.tween equals utils.tween.new. So this is the first time I've actually tried it this way, because I used to have it set up where you had to initialize the object as a tween manager, and then it could create its own tweens, but I don't want to do that. I want to instead make it so that tweens can be initialized into just instances. Your stream seems like a chill place to hang out. Awesome, I'm happy to hear that. So here, utils.tween.new. The target... Oh, am I able to do multiple targets? This is a really ambitious process. Because I wrote this file a while ago and I haven't really been using it. Values. Okay, I see. We're going to say Flickr, and the values is a table. I'm going to say Flickr dot... how should I do this? Are shaders better or worse for performance? I think that they aren't free. I think that there is some work to be done. Just like a real comfy chair and setup. Thanks, yeah. I'm a big fan of my chair setup. The only thing that I would like is if my chair could, like, more permanently lean forward like this. Because it's a recliner, so it goes, like, all the way back. And I do like that, but I think it would be better for the stream if it could, like, have me up here. But this is not comfortable. Yeah, it just leans me back like this. I actually am gonna make this a tween manager. I'm changing my mind. So the whole idea behind this tween manager thing that I did over in Effect is that it can manage multiple tweens. And now that I'm thinking about it, I do kind of want there to be multiple tweens. So let's see what this is looking like. Time equals flicker.speed. Oh man, this is not quite what I was expecting. I see. How I make music in my game. I use FL Studio. I'm sorry that I wasn't reading chat a second ago. I was like deep in thought trying to think of how I can make this work. So this is going to make it so Flicker is able to manage tweens. And now I'm starting to rethink, do I want to change? I think I do actually just want the one tween. Oh, I'm like jumping back and forth between how I want to do this. I think I do just want the one tween because the flicker is just meant to be really simple. I don't want multiple tweens. Unless I do. I think it'd be easier if I have the manager in the zone. Yeah, basically. It's more like I'm running at half efficiency because I do keep looking back at my stream or like at the chat, and it kind of interrupts me, and I look back at my code. I'm like, okay, where was I? And I look back, and I'm like, just like, I'm really doing a bad job of just getting this done because once I get this finished, then I can go back to being more involved with chat. I keep getting so frustrated by this thing because we don't even need that. We don't even need Tarks. .new. Okay, so we're using this function here. Oh, okay. Values and arg. So I think I can just include values. And then arg like this, where time is going to be flicker, or not flitter, jeez. Flicker.speed. And we don't need to include anything else other than that. I don't even need to include this. But I'm going to keep it anyway. And the thing here is that there's so many things that's like going through my mind at the moment. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to flicker I think the reason why I'm struggling so much with this... rubber ducking is a valid way to think through this. Thank you. That's a really good point. Okay. I should talk through why I'm struggling with this. What I'm trying to do is I have this light object. And it has light.x and .radius and all this stuff. And intensity and feather. I want to make it so these values fluctuate a little bit. I want them to be tweened so that they are rising and lowering, because if you look at like a bonfire, its intensity kind of flickers. So, to help extrapolate this concept away from this light object, I created this flicker object. So this flicker object handles everything related to this flickering concept. And I did this because I did not want to have all this logic just like inserted into the light logic so that it's all bundled up and it's all big and annoying and stupid. So I kept this flicker object all completely different. Now the reason I'm struggling is because now the flicker has its own radius, has its own intensity and has its own speed. And what was like hanging me up about this is like I need to tween the intensity, but how do I tween the intensity of the light when I'm coming from a flicker object? And the answer is I don't need to tween the light instance at all. Rubber ducking is helping me. I need to just tween the flicker value. I don't need to tween anything other than these. And actually, this radius, intensity, and speed, this is going to be fluctuating. And instead, I need to say flicker.target radius equals this. I need to save like these target values. Because this is going to be the amount that gets changed. And this is going to keep it stored so we know. Oh, what's rubber ducking? I'm sorry for saying that without actually explaining it. Rubber ducking is when you have a rubber ducky on your desk. So like programmers, they'll have like a rubber duck on their desk, and then they'll explain the problem to the rubber duck. And the rubber duck just sits there and listens. The rubber duck doesn't do anything. The rubber duck does not talk back. And in this case, you are the rubber duck. My audience is the rubber duck because I explain the problem to my audience, and they just listen, and they look pretty, and they smile, and they quack at me. And through the process of me explaining this problem, it helped me identify like why I was so hung up on this and why I couldn't figure it out. And the reason why is I was having this like weird separation between the flicker and the light. So thank you for the suggestion to Rubber Duck. If I ever do that again, in Gen Z terms, it's laboo-booing. That is hysterical. I've never heard that, but I love that. My skin already feels yellow. Same, but for different reasons. So what I'm going to do is, the way that the flicker works is it has this tween, and the tween needs to start and stop itself and go up and down with these values. And to start, it's going to go to 0. And I'm going to do this as the first tween. Self.tween's new, and then we're going to say radius equals 0 and intensity equals 0. And what this is going to do is this is going to tween the value of flicker.radius and flicker.intensity to 0. And I'm actually going to bump this up to like 64 so we can see it. It's going to be very, very noticeable. Then, in this update function, I need to call if self.flicker, then self.flicker : update. And then I need to say, oh, how do I do this without like exponentially creeping it? You know, I think I need a function. I think I need a function for get radius. Function light : get radius. Because it's no longer just return self.radius. It's return self.radius plus, actually, we need to say local flick equals 0 if self.flicker, then flick, yes, then return. There we go. So now, whenever I call light.radius, which is going to happen in the shader code, I need to get this flicker value. So as the flicker flicks, I need to grab the flick. Is that proper terminology? Over in the shader code, where is shader.lua? Light.radius. Here it is, look. So here, it's just getting light.radius, but instead of light.radius, I need to say light : get radius function. And it's going to call... Oh my gosh, I have way too many files open. It's going to call this function, which is going to look at the flicker value, get the radius of that, and return the sum, which is perfect. So that should handle that. Now, I'm wondering if this is going to work. I need to say if self.tween, then self.tweens, then. Because I think that the tweens has its own update. tweens update? Yes, there is. So when you make something into a manager, there's a tweens update, and then it's going to, oh. Yeah, it's going to call the update function on every individual tween, so that's good. If self-tweens, so that'll update, and then this flicker gets updated from light update, self-flicker update. This is being updated by the object itself, like player has its own light, and player is calling light update and passing the player's position. I think that what we're going to see is when the game starts, all the light sources are going to tween down to nothing. And the problem with this is it's going to be off screen when it happens. Oh, actually, no, it's not. Actually, I crashed the game. Light 21, attempt to field flicker boolean. Okay, so 21 in light 21, self to flicker, if self to flicker. Oh, I didn't even, I never actually applied it. I need to say light flicker equals, yeah, this. So what this is going to do is if the user passes in any information for a flicker in the args, then it's going to pass that information to lights.flicker, new flicker, and return that into this. Wouldn't it be bad if like flicker was a bad word? It kind of sounds like one. Oh, Nightbot's here. Whoa, I didn't know that. Hi, Nightbot. Thank you for being here. I haven't seen Nightbot for quite a while. I like, where did you come from? I didn't turn you on. What did I do? It said that you were posting links. But that's okay. Like, I think I turned Nightbot on. You weren't? Well, it deleted these messages, so maybe you were. I'm not sure. No, I wasn't. I'm not sure. Let me see. View deleted message. Yes. What happened? Here, actually, I want to show the message to explain what happened because it's really interesting. Yeah, this is what the message was, and it saw gl.is, and it thought that it was a link. It might have also saw this as well. But probably it saw this and it deleted the message, which is kind of funny. That's very aggressive. That is actually why Nightbot got turned off, because it was too aggressive. And I don't know why Nightbot just like decided to go to sleep for a few months and then now it came back. That was pretty weird. Yeah, it's no big deal. That was just a little accident. Nightbot definitely is a little bit on the controlling side, I would say. Oh, what was I gonna do? I crashed the game. Light 21, field flicker is, oh yeah, I fixed that. So I think we're ready to try it again. Okay, so this is what the game looks like. And I start it, and it crashes. Light 59, field tweens. Okay, let's fix that. 59. Oh, self. I can't say self. This is wrong. I need to say flicker.tweens. I shouldn't be saying self. That was a mistake. That was from when I copied it over, I think. I need to say flicker.tweens. And yeah, there we go. And then here I can say self, because self is referring to flicker. So that's fine. Whoa! It worked! Did you see that? It actually worked. It worked. It only did it once, but the light shrunk down. I'm gonna do it one more time. Oh, I can trigger it. There we go. Okay. You have the honor of rebooting Nightbot. Thank you. Okay, so when I restart it, you can see the light shrink. How do you pronounce Chalacade? I say Chalacade, but I've heard people say Chalacade, and I think that's perfectly fine. I don't want people to say Chalacade. Don't say that. I'll say Chalacade or Chalacade. Both are cool. Also, that home screen art is 10 out of 10. Thank you. I'm still working on the logo. The logo is really rough, but I like the background. Where'd you get that name? I did a lot of experimentation and like searching online and combining different words together, trying to find a fantasy name that wasn't taken. Because that's the thing, is you have to find a name that you like, but also isn't being used. And that's definitely hard. Oh, Chalcade. Same thing. Is that it's a portmanteau of a few different words. Cade is like arcade, and Chala is just like an inside joke. So it was just something that came from that. But that's how I come up with a lot of my names, is that they're a combination of two different words. That's like the, I don't know if that's lazy or if that's easy. Are the clouds in the home screen generated, or do you draw it? The clouds are not generated. They are drawn. They are not drawn by me. They were created. Who were they created? They were from an asset pack, and then I think I edited them. So I edited all of these background stuff, but originally they came from a Parallax asset pack. It's like 15 layers of Parallax. I think it's a lot. Yeah, I don't think it's 15, but it's like a lot. Let me see. Where do I have this stored at? Back, no. View, I think. Parallax. Lookout. Currently, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, this scene is only 6. But there are more in the final version. Like in the Steam game version, there's more than 6. I think there's 12 in that one. So I'm going to be adding more to this. Feels parasocial to recognize everyone but never have spoken. I think it's fine because like we're all coming back to the same place every week. I think that's great. I really do appreciate all you guys coming and joining the stream, and I appreciate all the regulars. I recognize a lot of people. Cactus Jack and Butterfly, Hefty Owl, all these people. I do recognize your names because you come in all the time. And honestly, like everyone that's here, M75, Bean Juice, Podell, Pappy, you're the visionary and director. How do you pronounce your name, Mr. You're the Visionary and Director? Because it looks like Jill, but I think those are letters that like are not English letters. I'm a loyal fan. Thank you. Will you support Mac and Steam Deck? Yes. So it is available on Mac Silicon. It is not available right now on Mac Intel. Mac Intel is a problem. I go by Abdul. It's technical. I'll try to remember Abdul. But if I can't remember that, I'll say Jill. But please correct me, because I don't want to call you Jill. I call you Abdul. I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember Abdul because you come into the stream a lot. Imagine interacting with a room of 75 people. I mean, that is a lot of people, but like thankfully a lot of people are just like watching, and a lot of people are being polite and just chatting. So it's pretty easy. I watched one of your vids where you said you've been working on your game for over 5 years. How do you keep going? Well, the thing is, like, even though I have been working on it for over 5 years, it's gone through so many different like phases and iterations that it's kind of hard to even recognize where it was. So I keep going because I just keep getting excited about new ideas, and I implement them, and I learn new things, and I learn new directions. So the game that I was creating 5 years ago is a lot different than the game I'm creating now. And I think that aspect is what makes it a lot easier. 75, but it's more like 20. Well, that's the thing, is that like not every person is chatting right now. I'm so hooked on game dev since the start of the year, and you're the first streamer I watched. Appreciate the content. Thank you so much. Leaving out Mac Intel is fine, I guess. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, I mean, ideally, I would like it so that everyone with a computer can play the game. It does feel a little wrong that some people would be excluded, but at the same time, Intel Macs are very old, and old hardware, old operating systems are less secure. So supporting operating systems that are not secure is not really necessary, in my opinion, because ideally people should be using secure, updated, supported operating systems. I don't really think it's necessary to support anything that's not. But at the same time, I don't really want to exclude people from being able to play the game. If someone's running an Intel Mac, which I actually personally know someone who does, it would feel wrong to like just hold them away from doing that, except for the fact that Steam makes it a lot harder to do it because they themselves are kind of edging away from supporting it. It's become more of a hassle than it's worth, is what I'm saying. I started watching your channel recently. Love playing your game in Steam, and also wishlist. Thank you. Followed my mono game tutorial and started learning it. Cool. Actually, by coincidence, I just updated the mono game Udemy course last week because the installation instructions were outdated, and I added more to that. I should probably post that to YouTube as well. After I skipped the cutscene, I was faced with Moonshire. This is why you don't skip cutscenes. I heard mono game has super fast FPS. I think they all do. Like, even my game here, I really should just have the game up. Even my game gets really high FPS. It's capped mainly by the monitor. Like, my game, if it was running on a high refresh rate monitor, it could run at, it's uncapped. If you had a monitor that had like 300 FPS hertz or whatever it is, it would run at that. I don't think that Love 2D really is the limiting factor. Although, I do think mono game has slightly better performance because it like converts all the assets into bytecode before launching, which I don't know how Lua does it. I don't know how Love 2D does it, but mono game is a lot more inconvenient and a lot more annoying to work with because it has the pipeline, like the content pipeline, but also the content pipeline is a performance boost. So using it makes your game more performant. So it's probably worth it in the long run. Is Delta Time the same as VSync? No, Delta Time is different than VSync. VSync is some kind of like optimization graphics tool that prevents the screen from tearing, and I don't exactly know how that works. It probably utilizes some sort of Delta Time factor, but Delta Time is literally just the time between the previous frame and the current one. So in this case, like DT or all of these functions I'm passing DT to, DT just represents the amount of time in seconds between the previous frame and the current one. So if we were running at 60 frames per second, DT represents a value of 1/60th, 1 divided by 60. So that's what DT would be at if you were running at exactly 60 frames per second. But the thing about frame rates, in any game engine, any framework, any game console, any machine ever, the frame rate is not constant. The frame rate will not be 60 FPS all the time, every time, 100% of the time, always. There will be drops in some way or another. And sometimes it's not noticeable because it's not really noticeable when your game drops from 60 frames per second to 55 frames per second. You probably won't even see it. But if your game moves slower when the frame rate is slower, that has to be accounted for. That's why I pass DT to all these places. Because if the game is running at 30 frames per second and things move at a like frame by frame basis, then it would be slower at 30 frames per second. But since this DT value scales with that time interval, it keeps it constant. So no matter what frame rate the game is running at, like speed runs won't be impacted by that. You could run the game at 300 frames per second, but that would not make your speed run any faster. You could run the game at 10 frames per second, and it would be very choppy and it wouldn't be fun to play, but you could still play through the whole game at the same time, like it would take you the same amount of time as someone at high frame rate. How does circle collisions work? I'll show this in Paint real quick because I love talking about that. Circle collisions, assuming you are coding it yourself. I'm also going to make this black because I don't like the really bright thing. But let's say that we had two circles, and I'm going to make one of them this color. So here's one circle. Okay, and then I'm going to have another circle here. Okay, so we can see with our eyeballs that these two circles are not colliding. They have not intersected. But, you know, if it was like this, we can see with our eyeballs that they are intersecting. So then the question is, how do we convert this logic to code? How can we tell with code that this circle, it has collided with this circle? And the answer is by analyzing their radius values. So this circle has a radius of this length, and this circle has a radius of this length. Okay? And there's also a distance between these two circles. Distances from the reds, exactly. So if you take this yellow line, you take this green line, and this red line, you can compare them. You'll take the red line. You'll take the green line. And then you'll compare that with the yellow line. If the yellow line is longer than the sum of the red and green lines, there is no intersection. There is no collision. But let's say that the green circle was here. Whoops. The green circle was here. Right. The yellow line now looks like this. Whoops. Oh my gosh. The yellow line now looks like this. And when you do this summation with the yellow line, now the yellow line's a lot shorter. The yellow line is going to be less than the sum of these two lines. And so if you do that logic in your code, you can tell if there is a collision. And genuinely, I think this is the easiest and most simple type of collision detection, because you can do the distance formula between your 2 points. So like you can say like this is one character, the red circle is your player character, and the green circle is an enemy. And as long as you know what is the enemy's radius, what is the player's radius, and what's the distance between these 2 points, as long as you know all that information, you're in good shape. You're good to go. So that's how circle collisions work. Do I want to see my work? Why is this so big? what the heck? Why is it so it's so giant? Since my game uses Love, it is technically open source, right? The code for my game is not open source. So Love 2D, the framework, the engine, is open source. In fact, we can. I kind of want to go to the website right now. If I go to Love 2D GitHub, you can find the GitHub page for Love 2D, and you'll see the license. It has a lot of licenses involved, but Love 2D specifically is under zlib. I don't know how open and available it is, but it does have an open source license, zlib. But it has a bunch of dependencies, and all these dependencies have their own license. Like this eNet module, it's licensed under MIT. This free type, this is like a font license. This is free type license. GLAD is MIT. GLSL language has its own license too. So all of these modules, there's so much complexity that goes into what makes something open source. Sure, Love 2D is open source, but like only Love 2D is licensed under zlib, and all of the individual modules that go into making up Love 2D has its own open source licenses. And my code for my game has its own license. My code is not open source. The code for Moonshire is not open source. It's not publicly available. You are not allowed to take it and use it for your own games. But my GitHub profile has tons and tons of open source stuff. Like, see, Moonshire is set to private. Only I have access to it. Only I am able to like make changes to it, and only I am allowed to use it for any reason. It's my code. But I share a lot of my code. A lot of my code is public. Let's look up Legend of Lua. Legend of Lua is completely open source. So this is an old version of Moonshire that is open and available. Can we see it? So all of this code that I'm showing here, this is all the Moonshire code. I am showing off my code right now. It's just not open source. Like, you are not allowed to screenshot this page, take this code, and type it into your game. Like, you can, but that's stealing. And Chat overlay, that is what you are seeing above my head right now. Chat. You didn't know that? Yeah. So I wrote the overlay that's above my head. It's all my code, and I open sourced it. If we go to Chat. I'm still in the process of like finalizing everything, because I wouldn't say this is ready for people to download and use, but the code is here. All of this code is here. It's all available. It's all open source. I decided to make it open source because I want this to be available for other people to use, and I want people to improve on it. I want people to take this code and use it for their own streams. But the code for my specific game that I'm developing right now, I'm perfectly cool with sharing it, with sharing my knowledge. And honestly, if you want to take these ideas, if you want to screenshot like this page here and literally type one for one what I'm doing, I'm not going to sue you. I'm like, that's fine. It's no big deal. But you're not supposed to do that, because this code does not have a license on it. The whole idea is I don't want someone to download my game, extract all the code out of it, and then steal it. That's what I don't want to happen. But something like Legend of Lua or Chat, I'm perfectly okay with people using that code for whatever they want. There's a combination of certain types of projects that you do want people to have full, like, unrestricted access to, and other code where it's like, here I'm just showing snippets. If you want to take some of my snippets, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that. But if you somehow got a hold of my exe and you extracted out the project and you took full files from it and stole it, that's not allowed at all, and I would not be okay with that, and I would probably try to do something about it. I don't know what, but these streams are informational. It's to show off certain aspects. It's not meant for you to steal my code, though. And my GitHub profile is meant for you to steal my code. Anything that's publicly available in any of my repositories that are public, go for it. That's what it's there for. I want you guys to look through all of this public code, because, like, sure, a lot of these are private, but there are a lot of public ones too. All the ones I just went through looked like most of those were private, but a lot of them are public, I promise. Like this is another public one. This is a script that I used, or that I wrote, to display the song title above my head. So this script here is completely open source, and I decided to open source it because I think that this feature is really nice. I think it's nice to be able to run your own MP3s on your computer and then display the title like on screen in OBS. I think it's awesome. Why did the stream start 1 hour ago? I missed so much. The stream starts at 10 a.m. CT every Monday. Chat is going too fast and I'm not getting noticed. Half of y'all won't even get read. He doesn't read them fast. All I ask is please slow down. I'm in chat for a second. Oh, I did miss one of your questions. I'm sorry for missing one of your chat messages, but I don't think that I think it's okay if occasionally chats get missed. I can't read everyone's. I saw that you said, how long will it take to actually finish your game? From just starting it, to modeling the 3D main character, and to actually finishing the project. Also, do I need a dev team for more experienced coding? That's a very loaded question, and it sounds like you are not super experienced. My advice for you is to create the simplest type of game ever. Have you made a game before? Go Play Creations, because you're asking about this. If you have not made a game before from start to finish, you desperately need to start with something simpler. You're talking about like 3D modeling and hiring a dev team. Do not start with that. Start with something simple. Please start with something like Pong or Atari Breakout or something really easy. Just get a paddle and make it move. If you can do that, have a ball that bounces around that you can bounce off of stuff. Create some really simple games to start out with. You're asking me how long will it take to actually finish your game from starting it to modeling 3D main? Yeah. If you're asking that, that sounds to me like the answer is 10 years. That's how long I think it'll take. Because it'll take several years to learn all of these things. It'll take another few years to make your first like big game. And then it'll take another few years to like hire a team and build up all those skills and do marketing. And then maybe at that point, you'll be able to get into 3D modeling and development. What I'm saying is that this is a long-term endeavor. I've been doing games my whole life. I just posted a video on my channel about how I started in 2009, and it's 2025 now, and I still have not been able to release a game yet. It is hard. I released Necrozone, and that was good. But in terms of like a full game that involved, like you were talking about, a team and 3D modeling, I'm not at that phase yet. So you're asking how long will it take? The answer is I don't know. For me, I've been doing this for 16 years, and I still have not finished. I still have not gotten there. So I'll tell you when I figure it out. But so far, my answer is at least 16 years, because that's how long it took me to get to this point, and I'm still not done. I don't want that to be demoralizing, but I want it to be. I want it to change your mindset of, I don't want you to go into your first game thinking it's going to be the game. It's not going to be the game. Your first game is going to be bad. Think about if you were learning how to play an instrument, would your first song be good? No. How many years of practice would it take for you to get good enough at an instrument where people will be interested in paying money for what you have to play? I'm sorry. It takes a lot of time to get to the point where you can sell something for money, sell a product. And with a game, we're talking about coding, we're talking about art, we're talking about sound design, we're talking about music, we're talking about marketing, we're talking about illustration for the Steam page, we're talking about writing. Like, these are skills that each one of those skills individually takes a decade to get mastery of. And game development requires mastery of all of those things together. And hiring a team is not gonna fill in the gap. You still have to know what you're doing. You can hire a team to help, but there's still so much learning that has to be done. So my advice for anyone who's asking questions like, how long does it take to finish a game, is just start with learning. Don't start with learning. Start with a small game. Start with a game that you can see the finish line on immediately. Start with Pong. Start with the simplest game where you just walk around and collect stuff. Very, very easy. And I think that even that will be very overwhelming for a newcomer. My goal for everyone watching this, I don't want to demoralize anyone. I want everyone watching this to eventually reach their goal of creating games and releasing games. And if you want to sell it for money, sure. My goal is for everyone to get to that point. But it is not realistic to say, like, I'll have all of that done and ready within a year or so. It's not even realistic to say it'll be done and ready within 5 years. I think that it takes 5 years to get through the, like, really grindy phase of figuring things out. Like, again, compare it to an instrument. How many years of playing guitar do you have to, like do lessons for, or, like, play in a small group before you're actually good enough that you can go on stage and perform for people? It takes a long time. And it's the same with game development. You have to be really skilled to start writing code, making artwork, making sounds that people are interested in experiencing. It takes a lot of work. And what I'm worried about is that people will go into their dream game right away, and it won't turn out as good as they expect it to, and they will stop. I do not want you to stop. The only thing that will prevent you from getting to your dream game is if you stop. But if you go into it thinking it'll be done within a year, it won't. How do we make a simple dash game like Temple Run but with cubes? That sounds great. That sounds fine. But even that does sound more complicated than what I was describing. Earlier in the stream, I was talking about... I don't want to show any of that stuff. Hopefully I didn't show anything weird. I didn't. Okay. Atari Breakout. Earlier I was showing in the stream Atari Breakout. I genuinely think that if your idea is any more complicated than this as your first game, if your idea is more complicated than this, then it's too complicated. But if you can look me in the eyes and tell me with honesty that your idea is not more complicated than this, then I say go for it. Because think about all the stuff that you're seeing here right now, just on this screen right now. There's a UI, there's a scoring system, I'm moving things with the arrow keys, there's the ball that, like, has angles and it's bouncing in a certain direction, there's the collisions, and there's lives, and think about all the different things that go into this. It's so much just for this. And if you manage to make a game like this, think about how much more experienced you'll be compared to when you started. Think about all the fundamentals that you'll have under your belt just from making a game as simple and stupid as this. This is so basic. And even this will teach you so much about game development. It's unbelievable. But a lot of people aren't willing to put in the time. A lot of people just want to jump straight into the dream game. They want to jump straight into their Zelda-like project like mine. And I'm sorry, it's just not gonna work out unless you put in the time of learning. It's as if you like wanted to learn painting and you jump straight into doing a giant mural on your bedroom wall. It's like sure, you might be able to finish it, but it won't look very good. But if you did painting for years, then you can try out the mural and then it'll look pretty good. How long would it take to do this game for you right now? To do something like Atari Breakout? I don't know. I think that like I could, if I was making this in Love 2D, I personally could make this like bare bones, like the main features of this game. I could do this in a day because I know how to do everything already. I know how to make things move. I know how a scoring system works. I know how the game loop works. I know how collisions work. I know how a UI works. I know everything. So at that point, it's just execution. But if you're new to game development, you will not know everything. You won't know anything. You'll go into it with literally nothing. So every one of those things that I just listed off, collisions, movement, angles, UI, scoring, all of those things individually might take you a week each. It might take you a week just to make a paddle move back and forth without like clipping the game screen or something like that. I don't know. There's all kinds of problems that can come up. You would be surprised how difficult it is just to get the simplest things working. And what happens is a lot of people will run into the simplest problems for their big dream project. They'll get overwhelmed. They'll say, well, I can't even get my character to move properly. How the heck am I planning to get this whole project, this dream game that I have, this big, expensive, wild thing that I have planned? How am I possibly going to get to the finish line if I can't even get my like character system working right? So that's why I really, it's sucking, oh, you're right, it's sucking me in. Snap out of it. You're right, I really do get sucked into that every single time. Stream making Pong, I really should do that. People have talked about that before where I should do a stream where it is just like a code Pong from scratch stream. And that would be awesome. I think that'd be awesome. He's nearing the point of no return, I know. What if I make Cookie Clicker? I think that would be great because Cookie Clicker, that even Cookie Clicker involves a lot of steps because you have to read input from the mouse. You have to detect, is the mouse over top of the cookie? Because it's the same thing. How do you detect, is the mouse on top of like the player here? How do you know? How does the code know if the mouse is on top of the player? And the answer is by using the distance formula, by the way. If you use the distance formula between the player's point and the mouse's point, you can tell if it's close enough. Don't do that on Moonshire Monday, though. Sure. Okay, that makes sense. I could do it on a different stream day. Show us the way, sure. That's a good idea. Yeah, I do like that idea. I want to go back to working on the flicker because like I stopped working on that. The flicker is set up to where I can... again, when the game starts, it flickers where the size of the light source will shrink. So watch again. It shrinks. Okay? So that's what I'm going for, is I want the light source to shrink, but not that much. It's going to shrink like more subtly, like a flicker, a very, very minor back and forth. I didn't even finish it. No, I didn't. All I did was I made the very first step. The very first step is the hardest step, though, because I made it so that the radius and the intensity shrinks. And actually, the intensity isn't even noticeable. Let's change this intensity to 0.5, and then let's change the player's intensity to 0.5. So it's going to start with an intensity of 0.5 and then shrink down to, no, sorry, it's going to start with an intensity of 1 because of the flicker. The flicker has its own intensity. So we're going to watch that again. Okay, so it is hard to see, but it did start out with full intensity because, like, look, compare the intensity of this circle over here to this circle. The player's circle is much less intense, much less. It's half. So that actually is functional, which is great. Now what I want to do is I want to make it so it actually does the flicker back and forth really fast, because right now it's just doing the one-time thing. Long time, bro. Glad to see you're still at it. How is Moonshire coming along nowadays? It's going good. It's going slowly. I'm happy to see you. Thank you for being here. It's going slowly because I'm kind of just like rewriting all this stuff to make it good. It's kind of, it bugs me when the game code is functional, but it's not fundamentally good code, because I plan to add more onto this game, add more content for a long time. And if the fundamental code for like the player or the levels and all that stuff, if that code is just not good to work with from the start, it just makes the whole process not very fun. So that's why I'm going back through and just brushing things up, making everything all good. And I promise it's gonna like explode in terms of efficiency before too long. But what I need to do now is I need to make it so that the tween automatically retweens itself. And actually I could probably, there's like a trigger. No. How do I do this? Okay, I think what I'm gonna do actually, I'm gonna say flicker, I'm gonna make a function flicker down, and it's going to call this and then also make a function flicker colon up. There we go. So now I have these two functions, and right now, by default, it doesn't call either of these. But if I like, so if I started the game now, nothing would happen. But if I call this function right away, it will go back to, or I guess it would be this one. If I call this function right away, it's going to do that same shrink motion like it did before. But I'm not going to call it right away like this. Or maybe I should. I guess I should. The other thing is I need to add the args. So I think that this has an exit. So I can pass in a function and it'll call that function on exit. So I think what I can do is if I pass in a new set of arguments, I'm going to say exit equals flicker dot up. I don't know for sure if this is going to work. I think it's likely that it won't, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So essentially what's going to happen is it's going to flicker down or shrink, and since I set flicker.up as the exit function, it's going to call flicker.up when the tween completes. So once it finishes shrinking, it's going to call flicker up, which is going to increase the radius. And again, on exit, it's going to call flicker down. So it's going to do a cycle. And I think it's possible that this isn't going to call properly because of like these, the colon notation, and I'll fix that afterwards. We'll see. It works. It works. Look. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. The flicker works. But right now, it is flickering very, very, very slowly. It's obviously, and it's linear. It's just like a whoop, 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 whoop. Very, very boring. What I want to do is make it so, one, it's faster, two, it's less extreme, and have some variance. So I think I'm going to do a check-in real quick. Set up for light flicker. I'm saying the word flicker so much that like it's starting to not sound like a word. It feels really off, like a perfect sequel. Oh, I know. I'm with you. There's definitely some more I can do to adjust this. So first, let's make it so that the radius is not as intense. The intensity of the flicker is not as intense. And I need to start using speed because I was not using it before. The player's flicker, that's fine. Intensity is going to start at 0.8. Okay, and then let's go over to... I need to apply the speed. So there's a time property. Time equals flicker.speed. And I'm pretty sure that will fix it too. That's good. Okay, so let's try that. Okay. This is a step in the right direction, but obviously not quite right. It's still flickering too much. It's not subtle enough, and it's too constant. It looks way too constant. Like if this was a fire, fires don't flicker constant like that. There's some variance. Can Love2D make RESTful API requests? Yes, it can. Because I have, because you can make network calls in general. So as long as you have an API endpoint, then you can make the REST API calls. I'm pretty sure. I can't think of any reason it wouldn't, because I make API calls to Steam and it does that just fine. So as far as I know, yes, but I haven't personally tested it myself. I can't think of any reason why I wouldn't be able to. You're using Godot, Max. That can happen to Godot crashes. Well, personally, I'm not using Godot and socket connections. Yeah, so I am doing that. I think I have sock, yeah. So I'm using a library called sock, and this is how I do my socket connections. Juniper, hi, welcome in. Well, the lighting looks really cool. Thank you. Right now, I'm working on making it so the light flickers. And obviously, this flickering of it is too extreme, right? It's too much. So let's go back over into the light. I'm going to make the radius of the flicker more like 2. And the intensity is fine. And the speed is okay, too. Let's try that. So that's just a bit of a decrease. And there's that. Okay, that's a lot better. It's a lot more subtle. It's still too constant, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's the same amount of flickering every single cycle. So what I want to try is go over to this. Instead of just being flicker.speed, we could add some kind of like randomness to it. Local rand equals 0.5 plus math.random divided by 2. So this is going to give us... actually, no, we can just do this. This is going to give us a 50% variance. That's probably too much. I'll probably do this, 0.75 like this. Okay, so then I can just add plus rand like that. And this is going to make it so the, there's a bit more, whoops. There's a bit more variance in how long it takes. Okay. The middle part is so off as well. Blending will help with it. I can change that too. So the middle part, you're talking about how there's a full intensity circle in the middle with the faded portions on the side. And you're totally right. And that's actually what the feather aspect of this is. I could turn it off and make it have no feather or reduce the feather. That's something that we could definitely adjust. So let's see. Oh, I screwed something up. Oh, did I think I accidentally screwed up my code somewhere. Oh, plus rand? Did I not type it right? Oh, whoops! I accidentally typed that there. That was a mistake. I hit a blue screen. Yeah, that's what the crash screen looks like in Love2D. Okay. Ah, it still broke. It still broke. You need a local random down. You're right. You're right. Thank you. Good catch. I forgot that they were different functions. It's not plus rand, it's times rand. That was my mistake. Because it's a multiplier. Does Love have multiplayer? I mean, not really built in. I wouldn't say multiplayer is like a built-in feature, but like you can make multiplayer games. You can have network events and just have network connections so that you can have two people playing at the same time, but you have to do it all yourself. And same with local multiplayer. Like I could have another player object running around, and that would be fine. That's not really a game engine constraint, but in terms of like built into the engine, it's hard to really say. Streaming programming itself seems sick. Chad is like your rubber duck. We were just talking about that. Other people in the chat can confirm. We were just talking about rubber duck programming because I was stuck on a specific issue with this flicker effect. How when I was first implementing it, like earlier in the stream, I could not figure out what was going on. Like I was changing this radius and intensity values, and I was just like struggling. And so like I'm glad you're here in this part of the stream because this part of the stream is a lot more clear than earlier. I was like really struggling. Yeah, before, like, someone was like, oh, just rubber duck us. Rubber duck us. And I was talking to them. And it worked out. I was able to figure it out. So it worked out. Sorry, I'm, like, stuttering and talking so fast. What about libraries? Yeah, there's libraries. So, like, I have, I was talking about the socket library for Love2D. That's how I make the connections between different clients. And in terms of, you're talking about libraries to support multiplayer. I'm not exactly sure what you mean because there's two aspects of it. There's the networking aspect of multiplayer, and then there's the actual like gameplay aspect of multiplayer, where it's one challenge to make the connection between two clients, and then it's another challenge to make it so that the two clients are able to like interact with each other. Because that's the problem I have with my game is currently I have it set up so that two different clients can connect together. Like I'm really good at network programming, and I was able to figure out how to make it so these two clients connect together. But it's not enough to just connect them together. Like, sure, they're sending network requests to each other, but, like, you can't see each other on screen. What now? The game engine needs to receive those, like, responses from the connection, and it needs to display that player on screen. Just having them connected doesn't automatically mean, like, you're in the same world. Now, it just means that you can hear what your other client is saying. And the other client is saying every frame that, like, oh, I'm moving this way, I hit the attack button, I walked into the water, and it's just sending all of these events every single frame, or not every single frame, frequently. It's frequently sending you all this information about, like, what's going on the other client's screen, and it sends that data to my screen, and then now I need to code it in so that it, like, sees that information and displays it. For example, their player is going to be on their screen, my player is going to be on my screen, and our clients need to communicate where each other are, and then once that information is communicated, then I need to actually code in the game, like, displaying on screen where your, like, partner character is at. It is not easy getting multiplayer working. It is a very big endeavor, and really that's the main reason why I went into this saying that I didn't want multiplayer in the game, because it's so complex and so difficult that I'm like, it's just gonna increase the length of development. And it's true that it does, but considering that I'm rewriting things anyway, I'm just being more mindful about allowing multiple instances of a certain character at any given time. Like before, there was only one player available in the game at a time, so it was not really feasible in the old engine for me to put a second player. But now that I'm, like, rewriting all the player code, all this player code that I have over in player.lua and the surrounding files, like all these, all this is brand new code, and it's written in a way that accounts for the possibility of multiplayer. It doesn't implement multiplayer, but essentially the big thing is that there's now this players list. It's a list of all player objects. That didn't used to exist. It used to just have one global player object, but that's no longer the case. Now I want it to be where maybe there's two players, or maybe really far down the line, it could have more than that. It could have 4 or 8 or something crazy like that. In that case, the limitation would be having content and infrastructure that could support that many. You need server state. There would be a lot of complications with that. That's why at the moment, I'm only planning on doing just peer-to-peer multiplayer where two people can play at once, and one person would act as the host, the other person acts as the client, and hopefully I can make it set up where that alone is enough to handle it. And the reason why I like that setup is because there would be no server. There's peer-to-peer, like what John Murky was saying, is that you could. That's how I have my Steam connection set up right now, because I already have this set up where you can connect the two clients together, and I have this finished. Like, the Steam.friend is fully connected and in the game. So I did code all this process of connecting two Steam clients together. But now, and also the way that these are connected, there's no server involved. The only server is a relay, because you have to, in order to connect two clients together, you essentially have to know their IP address, but you should never share your IP address with people. So the solution is that you have like a server host that both clients connect to, and then the server host obfuscates the IP addresses. So they're able to make that connection through the IP, but it obfuscates the information through the relay, so you don't actually expose any sensitive information. Server state, yeah, essentially. Really, it is still a server state. The reason why I was apprehensive of calling it that is because it's such a lightweight mechanism, and also it's something that Steam hosts on its own. So the relay system that works with connecting Steam friends together is hosted by Steam, and you connect through their relay, so there's no server that I have to host in order to get that connection going. I can have these peer-to-peer connections over a network through Steam without me having to have a dedicated server of any kind, and it's completely safe and relayed and nice. Only like 10 to 20 millisecond delay. I hope so. When I tested it with the connection just using like sent data, it was like very, very little delay. I didn't notice any. But I bet as the game grows and gets more complex, and especially if there's a distance, because if there's a physical distance between the two players, that can be a factor. I had so many issues, so I went with Lua Socket. I think I tried that as well, but something about sock.lua made sense to me, so that's what I ended up landing on. Going back to the light source and the flicker, I think that it's in a pretty decent state. I don't really like... Look, I don't like this, by the way, this way I'm calculating rand. I'm calculating it in two different spots. That seems dumb. I think that instead, it should have... Well, I don't want to calculate every frame. That's dumb, too. I guess I could just make a function for that. Function, flicker, colon, get time. Oh, I spelled function wrong. No, not get time. We're calling it's just this. So one, it's not enough randomness, so I'm going to change it to this. So this is going to be a range of 50% speed to 100% speed, which is pretty good. Sorry for the tangent. I don't mind at all. My whole stream is tangents. That's the name of the game here. So then I'm going to say local rand equals... for now, I'll keep it like this, return rand. Because I think I want to make this rand calculation a little bit more interesting, because this is just really, really basic. I think I'd rather have it set up where there's a bit more nuance in how this is calculated, but right now, full random is okay. Which is my main channel on Discord. It's the general chat. That's the one I'm in most of the time. Okay. I think the flickering is a lot more believable now, because you can see the randomness. You can see the randomness. How do I draw all the lights? Like in a canvas, so you can draw them separately? The way that I do the lights is there's a big overlay. It's a semi-transparent overlay, like a black transparent overlay, and the light sources are just cutting through that. They're piercing through it. Color change maybe? Yes, that's the next step, is that light sources really need color. Light sources apply color to whatever they land on, and most light sources are not just white light. So these light sources assume that the light source is white, but like if it was a fire is not white. Fire is orange and red and yellow. So I need to add some extra gradient around the player through shaders whenever there's a light source. And I'm not going to do that right now because it's going to be a complicated process. This is something that I did in my old version of the game. I wonder how it'll blend. It'll be hard. It'll be hard to make things blend. But right now, the lights are blending pretty nicely. Like, even like this spot here, it's a pretty clunky overlap, but it still looks... It seems like it's blending pretty nicely. You should make the randomness different between different objects, so torches have different flickering from the player. Yes. So right now, like, this flickering that I have on the player this isn't what I plan to have sticking on the player. I plan to have the player's light source be a lot smoother. This is the type of flicker that would be on, like, a fire. For example, let's go ahead and do that because I have a fire. I have fire.lua, and I can do the exact same thing that I did with player, where I have player.light. And over here in fire, we're going to say fire.light, fire.x, like this. Okay, that's fine. And then I need to update it. If self.light, there we go. And that should handle that. Now, I need to equip a torch. And actually, I'm going to get rid of the player's light source so we can see it better. I'm just gonna comment this out. And then input, I need to spawn a torch. I think I can do that using one of these. Oh, here it is, Y. Yeah, I can press the Y key and get a torch. Okay, so the player has no light source. Ah, it didn't work. It didn't work. Why didn't it work? Oh. Why wouldn't it work? Why didn't it work? It's because it didn't pick up... Fire. What is fire? It's because this fire object is pretty unusual. Oh, it's because the fire isn't rendered. I need to, This is so annoying. So the reason why it's not showing up, I can explain it very clearly. In this render file, it collects every object in the game. It iterates through every object in the game. And when it iterates through, it looks for shadows. And that's how it displays shadows, by the way. Is it iterates through every object in the game, and it finds, like, the shadow for the kiln or for the telescope and all that stuff. So everything has a shadow. And that shadow is determined at this spot right here. Well, I mean, everything has a shadow assigned, but the shadow gets, like, rendered here. It gets, it's rendering information here. Can the torch have light on it? Yes, it can, and that's what I'm working on doing. And in the same spot, if the object has a light, then it's going to cue the light in this spot here. But this is the thing. This is the big problem. Is the fire that's being rendered does not get rendered here. Where does it get rendered? I don't actually know. It gets rendered with the object. Okay, let me think. I think I have a workaround that'll fix this. This is okay, so this is not going to be the permanent solution, but I'm going to say if obj dot fire then, because this does go through. Does it? Oh, I'm so annoyed. I think what I have to do is I need to say if obj. I'm losing my mind here. If obj.weapon and obj.weapon.fire and obj.weapon.fire.light, then oh my gosh, I think this is what the problem was. It was. Look, I fixed it. I knew it. Dude, I know my code so well that, like, that was the stupidest solution ever, but that fixed it. That was actually the problem. So the problem was that the way the fire gets rendered is the renderer. How do I explain this? The way that the renderer works is it iterates through every object, okay? So it iterates through every player. It iterates through every player. But the player itself does not have a light source. Instead, the player is holding a weapon. But the weapon doesn't have a light source either. The weapon has a fire instance. It's the fire that has the light source. So that's why I had to do this stupid thing. I don't want to do it this way. I hate this. This is the hackiest solution I think possible. But I am happy that it works. I'm going to fix this. Like, I'm going to come up with a better way to do this. I do not like the solution, but it does work. Imagine throwing the torch now. Yeah, it totally would work. It would have the light source following it. Yeah, let the object render the light. It's not that the this self.lights queue. Oh, how do I explain this? The lights don't get rendered is the funny part. Lights don't get rendered. Self.lights.queue .lights. How do I explain this? The lights don't really get rendered. The lights are just points. A light source, like an object.light, this is just an XY position and a radius. And some other, like, little details, like the feather and the other things. But essentially, a light, like, a light doesn't have a sprite, and currently it doesn't have a color. A light is currently the absence of darkness. And the way I make that work is, again, it's not rendering any light. The shader figures out all of the different light count. Like, it figures out how many lights there are in the game, and it figures out the light count through that renderer. So whenever I call this self.lightsQ function, all it's doing is it's sending the light information over to the shader so that it knows where to remove the darkness. It's not rendering any light. It's sending data on where light sources are, how intense they are, and how big the radius is, and it uses that information to remove darkness, which is so weird and confusing. But the reason why it's complicated is now I need this self.lights:*q. This needs to happen from outside of this collect function, because this collect function, I don't think it's going to be capable of figuring out where all the light sources are, because in this case, the light source is buried inside of the object's weapon, inside of the weapon's fire, and inside of the fire. So I don't know how I can do this without having this function called from inside of the light source itself, which maybe it could. I don't like doing that, though. I guess I could do that. Does it remove darkness or adds brightness? Currently, it only removes darkness, And it can add brightness later if I have some sort of color shader attached to the light. Currently, I do not. I'll pretend I understand what he is saying. I mean, I only barely understand what I'm saying, so don't be upset about that. I think that what I'm trying to do is, right now, this render object, it is figuring out where all the light sources are. But I don't think that's an option anymore. I think that the light sources themselves need to send their data to the renderer every frame. You can make a function so it looks correct. Sure, but then this is only going to come up again with some other object type. Is this hard-coded approach works, but it only works for this. The next time there's a light source attached to an object, like a nested object like this, it won't work. That's the problem. The problem is I have nested light sources on these objects. Like the object, the player doesn't have any light source. The player has no light source, but the player's weapon has a fire, and the fire has a light source. And that's what I'm struggling with, is that this renderer needs to be aware of that. How does the renderer become aware about nested light sources if the light sources themselves are not sending data to the renderer? I think that's the only solution. I think that I have to change it so that these light sources have a reference to the renderer, and then every frame it's just sending its own information to the renderer. When am I explaining the whole project? Who's to say? I mean, I think once this code base reaches a point where I'm not fundamentally making big changes anymore, I'm working on content, that would be a really good point. Because right now I'm working on like fundamental engine level stuff, but eventually I'm going to reach the point where I'm working on content, like new areas, new bosses, new weapons, and things like that. That's content. This is like the fundamental engine. I do programming, this is so cool. Awesome, I'm glad to hear that. I think there are times when programming is fun to watch, especially when you bring something to life. Like, I think it was cool explaining and showing how the flicker effect was made, because I showed that from end to end. But now I'm reaching the point where it's like the data organization aspect of it. That part is less fun to watch because it's mostly me just like going through and being like, oh, I see. The light isn't stored within object. There is no object.light for the torch. The light is buried inside the fire, inside the weapon. So I think I'm going to change it so over in light, in this update function, I don't want to do this. I hate this. I'm so sad. I'm so sad that I have to do this. But I'm going to do it for the greater good. For the greater good. Every update function is going to say render.lights self. It's going to pass itself to render.lights. Now, is render global? I don't think it is, actually. Oh, it is. Okay, render is global, so I can just immediately pass it to that. You know, this this maybe isn't that bad. As long as the light is being updated. Oh, this is the flicker. I don't want to do that. I want to put this in the light source. That's what I wanted to do. Am I solo dev? Yeah, I'd say so. I commission people for help with like specific art tasks and some testing, but otherwise, no, I'm solo. Sorry, there's a rule in chat. You can't reveal your age. I'm sorry about that. It's to keep our younger folks a bit safer. So I don't have a team. Nope, it's just me. If you have a global variable, it's only in the certain file, right? Only shared when used require. So yes, the way that the global variable works in this case is I have this render table, and a table is just a variable. So I have this render global variable. And the way this becomes global is because this render.lua, it got required somewhere. So at some point I called require, this is under graphics. Start, game start. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. Where do I call these? Here it is. Render. It's not here. Here it is. Here it is. Okay. So when the game starts, these are all the global modules. There's a lot of them. There's more than I thought there were. Kesselreen, hi, welcome in. What programming language did I learn first? I think the very first one, well, like I learned Game Maker, which that's like drag and drop coding. And then after that, I think it was Visual Basic and then Java. So these are all the global modules that are in the game. And this is a lot of modules, but when we look at the total number of files in this game, it really isn't that many, because there's way more files than there are globals. So things are modular in a good way, but this is all the global ones. So the renderer, the render object, is global. So from this light object over here in update, I can just call render.lights:q. This is going to happen every frame. It's not perfect though, because this happens all in one go. And I don't know. Let's just see how it works. I think it'll be okay. Because what I like about this is that the light source, it was being captured at literally the exact same moment that the shadow was captured. I love that. I love that the shadow is captured at the exact same moment as the light source. But now that's not going to be the case. I have to remove this completely. The light source sends its light data to the renderer externally. You can make a table for every object like iterable, saying like the weapons has iterable with fire inside. That's true. The problem with that idea, Alex, is I have to account for every combination. I have to account for every nested table. And in this particular case, it's worse because it's a nested table inside of a nested table. So it's like multiple levels. So if I want this to work the way it currently is working, I need to account for every combination. I would have to like plan ahead, when instead I could just get rid of this and have it send internally, and then automatically that information is going to be sent automatically. But again, it's disconnected from Shadow, which, you know, I could do this in Shadow because all the shadows have their own update function too. Yeah, I could do this too. I could put the shadow rendering logic in the shadow file as well, but again, I like it happening at the same time as the collection. But I think this is gonna work. This probably is gonna work. Pippa, hi, welcome in. I broke the game. All the light sources are missing. Okay, so all the light sources are missing. Why? So before, I was doing this. And if I save and run, it should still work. Okay, so light sources are back. But what I did, if obj.light, we don't need these at all anymore. But let's make sure this is queuing correct. Over here in light, queue self. I'm surprised that doesn't work. Unless like the timing of this happens. Should you remove below object when light source is not present? Should you remove below object when light source is not present? I'm not exactly sure what you mean. I'm sorry about that. Could theoretically still create some value for that so it can get its child light source for itself. You're right. That is actually true, is that there is an upward snapping, or like there's an upward parent structure, because the fire knows its parent is the torch, and the torch knows its parent is the player. So if that was like a doubly linked list, then the player would have access to the fire, which has access to the light. But again, the player would still need to know that there's data there. It would have to iterate through. Like, the only reason that works is because I'm specifically looking for something at player.weapon.fire.light. I still need to know about that. I can't just, like, blindly iterate through every piece of data that the player has looking for light objects, because that's just inefficient. Because at that point, either the light sends data itself, or the renderer needs to look through every piece of data everywhere looking for any signs of light, and I don't want to do that. That's too much. That's too much. Because currently, the way the renderer works is it's only iterating through all of the relevant objects. And only if the relevant object has a light source does it add it. I think it works with recursive function like o.iterable, then render obj, intertext it again. That's still the... I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And I still think that it's not... I still think there's some limitations to that. I still think there's some limitations where I want to try and make this sending light from here. I really think this should work. I really think this should work. I don't know why it's not. Something about that bothers me. I mean, it bothers me too. The game is amazing. I have played the demo. Oh, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I didn't get what you meant. What I meant was the player gets its children, and if they have a light source, the player stores it in the code. So the render sees the light source as in the player. Yes. Again, so I'm with you. I'm with you. And that is kind of what I'm doing, but it's more than that, because it's... The player gets its children, and if they have a light source, the player stores it in code. That is what this is doing, isn't it? If the player has a weapon, and the weapon has a light source, I mean, that is what this is doing, isn't it? Just a thought shader. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to make this work as a shader. I need to wrap this up because it's past my lunchtime. Dot light. Is adding the light to the queue. I know, but it is. It is. And the code works like this. The code works like this. Yeah, so the code is functional. There's no problems here. Well, there is a problem. The problem is this is hard-coded. What I was thinking about was like a variable that gets overridden, for example. Yes, but I would have to manually override that variable by looking for the light source. I'm still giving what you're saying a chance. I really do want to make what you're saying work, because what you're saying is what I want to make work. But I don't think there's a way to do what you're suggesting without searching for light sources. And it works in this case because I'm manually specifically looking at weapon, and that's fine. But what if, like, there's a different object type that's not a weapon that has a nested fire thing? Then this is the same problem. Or I guess I could do, or what if it's not fire? What if it's something other than fire? This is what I'm saying, is like, I would like it so I don't need to come into this file and make changes to it whenever I add a new type of light source. It would be really cool if just like light sources always reveal themselves to the renderer. The objects that search inside its tree locally, though. The object should look inside its tree locally, though. So... should it? I don't think this will need to be edited manually. So... Shader was a separate message from this message. I like the idea of the object communicating it has light to the renderer's lights array versus the renderer going through every object. The reason it worked well going through every object is because I was already going through every object in the game in order to draw its sprite and to draw its shadow. Because I never had this nested shadow problem, but think about this. What if the player is holding a weapon and the weapon casts a shadow? Currently, that doesn't happen. Currently, when the player is holding a weapon, the weapon does not cast a shadow. But what if I wanted it to? Is this like a directory of items that have light sources required? Kind of, yeah, it is. So what this is this is all of the different categories of items. There's main items like the player and the weapons. There's the shadows. There's the floor. So there's different like layers of items, and for each layer, it's going to go through each item in that layer. So here, like in the main layer, it goes through all the players, all the props, and all the effects, and it looks for a light source in any one of those places. So when I directly attach the light source to player, I said player.light. Since it's directly checking that, it worked. And since the props directly have a light, it worked. But if I gave prop, like let's say I gave prop a fire source, then it wouldn't pick up the light source because it's not like directly looking for the nested items. Let's say the player has a child of the fire. The player search for its children, find fire. It does. The player has a child object. I think we are on the same page. Like, I really do think we are on the same page. The player does have a child object. The player has a child object called weapon. So this is the same thing. If player.weapon. So if the player has a child object, and it does, it has a child object called weapon, you're saying it should iterate through every value that weapon contains to see if it has a light source. In this case, it would not find a light source. It would find a fire, though. Or should it iteratively go through every child instance of the weapon too? Because if it does that, then we're talking about a lot of performance costs just to search for lights. Because this is the child reference. This is the child reference. Even if I created a table of every child object that the player has, the child object is weapon. End of story. There is no situation where fire would be made a child of player, because fire is attached to the weapon. The fire is not attached to player, ever. And I'm not going to change that. The light source is attached to fire. This is why it's challenging, because the light is attached to fire, the fire is attached to weapon, and the weapon's attached to player. Even if player.weapon had a light source, I would have to account for that. No, just have the lights or shadows array and have the object add itself to the array. Is that the player had the light directly, so if there is a way for the player to inherit its children values or whatever it's called. Yes. Okay. You're suggesting that at some point, when the player picks up a weapon, it should somehow iterate through all of that weapon's child properties to see if there's a light source somewhere in the child properties, has property recursive, and has property recursive, then return true and false. Should I do that? Alex, I think the code that you wrote will work. I think the code that you wrote will work. Should I do that, though? I don't know if that's a good idea. Because think about the cost of doing that. Every single object is going to iterate through every single instance of every single thing. Because, like, the player has more objects than just, like, the weapon. It has default weapon, and it has all these other values. It has to iterate through every single one of those properties. Any plan to update the Unity course? I mean, yeah, definitely. Because right now the Unity course is in a good place. Both of them, the mono game and the Love to D one, they're both in a good place. But I do want to go back to the Love to D one and make some updates to it because there's definitely some things I could add. I appreciate everyone in chat like helping me out and giving me ideas and feedback and suggestions. I am thinking really hard about this because I think we're all on the same page where we want to make this work. That cycle, it's the render cycle, so you already loop into everything. No, you don't though. You don't, because this iteration here, this list table is every player. This iteration is only going through the root level of players. It's only going through the root level of props. It's not iterating through every sub table of players, every sub table of props. Because some of the sub tables are very big. There's lots of sub tables. See, for performance, you should just let the player know what or has light before it even bothers to check. If you are concerned with performance. Yes, it's funny because what I did here, this is out of everything that we talked about so far, out of everything we've discussed so far, this is the best performant way to do this. This is the most performant way to do it because I am not doing any unnecessary checks. I am not unnecessarily iterating through anything that does not need to be iterated through. I'm worried that a lot of the suggestions from chat involves iterating through a very large amount of data looking for one specific thing. And that is something that I don't want to do. If Lua was OOP, that would be easy to fix. It wouldn't though. It still wouldn't. You would still need to check if player's child object has a child object that has a light source. You still have to check for that. You can't iteratively go through because you're calling this from the root perspective. You're calling this from the player reference perspective. You're not calling this from the light perspective. If we were calling this from the light perspective, then we could just say add light. We wouldn't have to check anything. We don't. Ask yourself how many lighting objects you even have and how many plan to add. That's the thing is, this is the most performant way to do it, but it's also hard-coded. Hard-coded ways tend to be the most performant way to do it. Still has to do a check every single time to see if a light is there. Expensive, rather than have small lights array objects that have light at themselves too. That's what this is. That's what this is. I'm trying. I like we're so close to seeing this same thing. Like I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. That's what this is. That's what this list is. So, this is. I'm gonna try and explain this again because I see exactly what you're saying, Sinju. I know what you're saying. What you're suggesting is rather than the light source be an instance object that's attached to the fire, because right now the light source exists on the fire. It's fire.light. I could change it. I could change it so that light sources are not local objects. Instead, light sources are global objects. Like you're suggesting, we can have a global array of lights. We can have just a global table called lights, and whenever a new light is created, it gets added to that global array. That way, in the render function, we could just, like you're saying, we can just iterate through that global array of lights, and we would have direct access to them. And that's nice because it's like a global array is right there. The challenge of doing that is you then need a reference in here to reference. Oh. I think. Why does that check every frame? Because the light source can move. The light source can change its position every frame. And Oh, you're asking why does it have to check if one exists? You're right, it could cache the existence and then just do the path, I guess. I wouldn't call anything. I would make the player just search the thing it picks the pickable already checked before. Yes. I think we all have reached the same conclusion, is that there are going to be pros and cons with changing things away from this. This solution here is the most performant, and it's the easiest, but it's also hacky, hard-coded, and it does not work on other things that this will happen to. Because there are going to be light sources attached to nested objects again in the future, and I'm going to have to come in here and account for that. There's going to be, if there's ever a place where there's nested sources, I would have to come in here and account for that. But after I account for it, we're done. The performance is great, and there's no issues. And the light source shows up, and it gets updated. Everything's good. I don't want to do that because that's annoying. I would like it where if a light source gets added to the game, it works. I don't want to have to come in here and add a new condition every time a nested light source is used. So the lights array. Lights can't have their own positions dynamically updated. They can, and that's why that's what this queue function is doing. It's taking a snapshot of the current data, the current position, the current intensity, the current size. It's taking a snapshot of all that information and sending that information to the shader. Because the shader needs access to this light object. This light object is buried deep within fire, within weapon, within the player. It's buried in there. That's the struggle, is that it's buried in there, but the shader needs access to that information. So every frame, this renderer is looking at that light. It's just looking at it, and it's taking notes, and it's sending those notes off to the shader. So, and this is the global, by the way, like this queue. This is what the shader is able to reference. The shader isn't able to see weapon.fire.light because that's so deep. This renderer is doing the heavy lifting of searching, of finding everything, and queuing that information so that the shader, it just has a list of all the data, and it does it. The shader doesn't need to figure out where are the light sources even at. It has all that information in front of it, thanks to this render collect. That's the whole purpose of this. That's why it's shaken up like this. What if the light doesn't move? It is not updating information. It is... Okay, you're right. That is an unnecessary update. But then you have to ask... Okay. So this is a common problem of, should you update something every single frame, or should you update it only when necessary? Because that's what Sinju was talking about. If the light source is not moving, do we even need to send update information for it? And the answer to that is, you're right, but how do we know if an update has happened? We need some kind of, like, system in place that identifies if the data is different than what it was before. So either you do send it every frame, or you have logic in place that checks if any changes were made. And if there are changes made, then you systematically choose which ones get sent, like, based on that logic. There's a performance cost to both. Objects update method. Yeah, you still have to identify... I think that at this point, I'm just going to... I think I'm just going to call it a day. I need to think more about what the best solution to this would be. I really do appreciate everyone's input on this because you've given me a lot to think about. I think that there are some good thoughts in here. Sinju and M75, thank you especially for all the stuff that you were saying, and Alex and Hefty Owl. All this information is good for me to think about. I appreciate you challenging my ideas and giving me something to consider, because I don't think I don't think this is the right way to do it. What I'm doing here is not the right way. And I'm thinking very hard about all your suggestions, and just in my head, I'm not able to get it to a place where it's better than this. We ruined his brain, let's go. Yeah, basically. That ending part was confusing, but green stream as always. Thank you. Yeah, that ending portion was very deep. I was very involved with getting all that stuff figured out, but I'll get it figured out. And worst case is I'll do hard-coded until I find something else to do. I do think calling it from here is okay too. I don't know why this didn't work, if I'm being honest. I think it should have, but I'm going to experiment a bit with this too. Don't forget it next week. That would be a good thing for us to start with next week. Yeah. Okay. But yep, on that note, I think I'm going to call it quits for the day. That was a really, really good stream, and I appreciate everyone being involved with the conversation. It was nice. People like Alex, Nim75, Butterfly, Sinju, Hefty Owl, thank you so much for being here, and I will be back next week for yet another Moonshire Monday. Rescue Squad, and Wolf, and everyone else, thank you for being here, and I will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.